Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Tensei Slime Light novel summary series on AniMonolith. After spending some time on the side stories, today we're returning to the main plot. If you remember the end of Volume 16, Rain had rushed to Tempest to ask Rimuru to attend Walpurgis, showing up completely battered. But before we get into Walpurgis, we need to talk about a major event that took place in Milim's territory around the same time. While Rimuru and his subordinates were clashing with Rudra on the Emperor's battleship, an unexpected visitor appeared in Urizania. At the giant construction site known as the Sky Castle, the palace Rimuru promised to build for Milim after the last Walpurgis, work had stalled because Geld had returned home to support Tempest during the war. Only the remaining High Orc workers stayed behind, handling small tasks. On the top floor of this unfinished Sky Castle, in a temporary office called the Sky Room, Milim found herself facing Obera, one of Feldway's 3 Phantom commanders. The only witness was Midley, silently observing behind Milim. Carrion and Frey were away helping Tempest, though they wouldn't have been useful in this situation anyway. Milim had chosen not to take part in the Empire's war for several reasons. She needed to stay behind to defend her country, since there was always a chance the Empire might attack through her territory. And more importantly, she did not want to personally intervene in the affairs of humans. Staying home turned out to be the right choice, because a stranger had now come directly to her doorstep. "What business do you have with me?" Milim asked calmly, while Midley stood ready for a fight. But instead of attacking, Obera surprised both of them. She removed her mythical great armor and knelt before Milim. "It is an honor to meet you, Dragon Princess Milim. I am Obera. I was once one of the 7 original angels and a loyal apostle of Veldanava, the Star King Dragon." The last thing Milim expected was respect. She had been ready for a battle, only for this beautiful woman, with star-like eyes and wavy black hair like the night sky, to bow her head in reverence. Milim was caught completely off guard. When Milim asked why she had come, Obera simply smiled and told her that it was natural Milim didn't recognize her. When Milim was born, she had been away in another world on a mission. She apologized for the late greeting. Milim still couldn't figure out her intention, so she asked again, "You're strong. Aren't you here to fight?" But Obera shook her head. "No, I came to offer my greetings and give you some advice." With that, the 3 moved to a temporary reception room to continue the conversation, where Obera introduced herself more formally and began explaining the situation. Obera reintroduced herself and explained the situation in detail. When Milim heard that her aunt Velgrind had fallen under Feldway's control, she immediately wanted to rush out and help Rimuru. But Obera warned her that it was already too late to do anything. Milim grew angry and demanded to know why Obera had not come sooner. Obera bowed her head and took full responsibility. She was still a subordinate of Feldway and had been ordered to defend the Palace of Monsters. Visiting Milim was already a serious violation of her orders, and she had waited for the only moment in which she could move without being discovered. She felt ashamed for disappointing Milim, so she offered no excuses. Seeing that Obera was genuinely remorseful, Milim calmed down and thanked her for bringing the information. Using her ability to read a person's true nature, Milim understood that Obera was not lying, and that her intentions were sincere. She also stated that Rimuru was a cautious person, and would likely survive no matter what happened. Still, she warned Obera not to cause trouble for her best friend. Obera agreed, but also pointed out that, as one who needed to maintain Feldway's trust, she could not act freely. Even so, if Milim wished it, she was prepared to defect right away. Milim sensed no falsehood in her words. When Milim asked about her true purpose, Obera explained that Feldway seemed to be plotting the resurrection of Veldanava. To her, this was disrespectful. Veldanava would revive on his own, without anyone's interference, and the fact that he had not yet returned must have a divine reason. Because of this, Obera believed that instead of forcing Veldanava's revival, Milim, his daughter, should be the one to inherit his place. Milim asked whether Obera was choosing to side with her. Obera said she wished only to become Milim's tool, asking for nothing in return, and finding joy simply in serving her. Milim understood her loyalty, but questioned whether she was willing to betray Feldway. Obera replied that it was a difference in belief, and that in truth, Feldway was the one acting against Veldanava's will. She believed Veldanava desired Milim's happiness, and anyone who threatened Milim deserved no mercy. Obera was wise enough not to act on her own, which was why she risked her life to meet Milim first. She would remain hidden if Milim wished, but if ordered, she would bare her fangs against anyone. This was the true nature of the Phantom Commander. Milim eventually accepted her sincerity. She announced that she would trust Obera and take her in as a subordinate. Midley had no objections. Obera officially joined Milim's group, and Milim promised to introduce her to Carrion and Frey after the war. Pleased with this new addition, Milim declared that she now had her own 4 heavenly kings, wanting to match Rimuru's group that she had always been secretly jealous of. If Frey had been there, she would have shot down the childish idea immediately. But Midley was the only one present, and was thrilled to be named the leader. This was how Milim's 4 heavenly kings were formed. Obera accepted her sudden appointment as one of Milim's 4 heavenly kings without any complaint. To her, Milim's words carried the same weight as divine will, so she placed Milim's priorities above everything else. But this immediately created a new problem. Now that Obera was part of her group, Milim had no idea what to actually do with her. Should she keep Obera nearby, or send her back to Feldway as a spy? With only Midley around, and knowing he was not the best person to ask, Milim decided to ask Obera directly. Obera answered without hesitation. She wished to return to the Palace of Monsters. Since her true body remained in the other world, staying here for long would force her to manifest a physical form, which she preferred to avoid. Beyond that, her main duty was to monitor Ivaraj, the world-destroying dragon. Cornu's primary mission was to invade other dimensions, and Zelario's was to deal with the Insectars. With the pact between Phantom King Feldway and Insect Lord Zelanis, Zelario was now able to move freely. If she abandoned her post, it could interfere with Feldway's current plans. Zelanis and Ivaraj, she explained, were both dangerous beings, but Ivaraj was especially destructive. Coexistence with it was impossible. Although it existed only by Veldanava's will, it had to be kept sealed in the other world. Understanding the importance of that responsibility, Milim allowed Obera to return and continue her surveillance. However, she also wondered what Feldway intended to do with a creature like Ivaraj. Even Obera did not know. Obera then explained everything she understood about Feldway's motives. He had once been entrusted by Veldanava with overseeing Ivaraj, but he now intended to abandon that duty in favor of resurrecting his god. Feldway's group was currently expanding the Underworld Gate, and once it was complete, they planned to invade the Cardinal World with the combined forces of the Phantoms and Insectars. Milim pointed out that leaving the gate open would risk releasing Ivaraj as well, but Feldway seemed indifferent to that danger. In truth, Feldway no longer cared about this world. Believing that it had stolen Veldanava from him, he intended to destroy it and rebuild a new world where only his chosen ones would survive. In that sense, even Ivaraj rampaging freely might suit his goals. Hearing this, Milim's mood soured. First, the war had interrupted her plans with Rimuru, and now this new threat was looming. Annoyed, she declared that she would simply defeat Feldway herself. Midley, always eager to follow Milim, immediately asked for permission to join the fight. Milim agreed enthusiastically, even though neither of them had a concrete plan. Before the two could spiral any further, Obera stepped in. She reported the last piece of intel she had shared with Feldway's forces. Rudra had managed to obtain Velgrin's dragon factor, but Rimuru intervened at the final moment, forcing them to suspend the next stage of their plan. This confirmed that Rimuru was safe. With that reassurance, Milim and Midley calmed down. Since Feldway's group had withdrawn, rushing into action now would be pointless. The best course was to relay everything to Rimuru and coordinate their response together. Milim then ordered Obera to return, and keep watch over Feldway until further notice. The two established a dedicated magical communication link that would work across dimensions, something only possible thanks to their high proficiency. With their connection secured, the meeting came to an end. Obera departed for the other world, while Milim and Midley watched the distance with unease, aware that another conflict was already on the horizon. End of flashback, back to reality. When Rimuru stepped through Rain's portal, he arrived in a world of silver ice and snow. Unlike the previous Walpurgis, which had been held in a separate dimension, this time the venue was Guy's palace. Rain guided him inside, with Shion and Diablo following quietly behind. Even though the outside world was frozen beyond survival, the interior was warm and comfortable. Still, half of the palace had collapsed, a clear sign that something unusual had happened. Guy greeted Rimuru and told him that Milim and Dagruel would arrive soon, so he should take his time and wait. He then led Rimuru into a large hall. It looked like a ballroom, with several round tea tables scattered around the room and chairs placed without any particular order. Everyone could choose wherever they wanted to sit. Rimuru noticed that Luminous and Leon had already arrived. Luminous was accompanied by Pope Louis and her butler Gunther, while Leon had brought the knights Alros and Claude. After everything that had happened with the Empire, seeing familiar faces put Rimuru at ease. They exchanged brief greetings before Rimuru sat down. Shion and Diablo remained standing behind him, refusing to sit, but Rimuru decided to let them be. The room stayed quiet until Ramirez burst in loudly. "Hey! Why did you leave me behind?" Rimuru was surprised. He had assumed she was with them the whole time. Rain was just as shocked. She had believed Ramirez was following her and hadn't realized she had been left behind. Mizeri then appeared, explaining that she had received an urgent call from Ramirez and had gone to pick her up. Like Rain, her face was bruised from the previous battle, though she still carried herself with sharp composure. Seeing the two of them side by side, Rimuru finally noticed how different their personalities were. Until now, he had been too busy to pay attention to details like that. Ramirez, still worked up, explained that she had been busy thinking about whom to bring with her when Rain accidentally left her behind. Rimuru then realized she had arrived with Beretta and, unexpectedly, Veldora. "What are you doing here?" Rimuru asked. Luminous reacted instantly, clicking her tongue in annoyance at the sight of Veldora. "Tisk! That dragon again." Veldora, completely unfazed, declared that he'd heard an important meeting was happening and refused to miss it. Since he was too late to follow Rimuru, he had intercepted Ramirez instead and convinced her to bring him along. Ramirez proudly backed him up, insisting that bringing Veldora was like bringing 100 helpers. Beretta, meanwhile, could only shake his head. Rain apologized, looking discouraged, but Rimuru reassured her that it wasn't her fault. They had all arrived in a rush anyway. And the video ends here. Let's follow the rest of the story in the next video. Thank you for listening, goodbye, and see you in the next video.